Welcome to The Real Debrief, the show where we dive deep into the world of film production, exploring the genres you love, the projects making waves, and the trends shaping the industry. We're here to give you a 360-degree review for entertainment professionals. So grab your popcorn and get ready for some expert insights. And, well, the occasional bed joke from Talen. It's The Real Debrief. Now your hosts, Talen and Lisa.
Welcome back, lovely listeners, to another episode of, well, let's be honest, probably the best podcast you're going to listen to today, right? I'm Talen, your charmingly funny host, and sitting across from me is the delightfully witty Lisa. Say hello, Lisa.
Hello, everyone. Talen, charming and funny? You've clearly been watching too much Noel Coward footage.
Ah, Coward. Speaking of which, today we're diving into the life of Noel Coward, a man who, if I may say, is probably rolling his eyes somewhere in the ether at the thought of us dissecting his legacy.
That's assuming he's not still out there, haunting us with clever quips from beyond the grave. Coward's blithe spirit literally had him conjuring up ghosts on stage, so who's to say he didn't write himself into an eternal afterlife cameo?
True, Lisa. Noel Coward didn't just live life, he performed it. And he wasn't about to let a little thing like death spoil the show. And what a life! Born into relative poverty, Coward became the quintessential British sophisticate. A playwright, songwriter, actor, director, and singer. I mean, he was like James Bond without the guns, but with more tuxedos and much sharper dialogue.
Exactly. Noel Coward was a master of wit and a pioneer of what we now think of as the cool British persona. You know, the type who could deflect any insult with a raised eyebrow and a dry retort that leaves everyone else floundering.
Or firing off a telegram to turn down a role in a James Bond film. Remember that story? Ian Fleming asked Coward to play the villain Dr. No, and Coward shot back with a telegram that read, "No, no, 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 1,000 times no." I mean, that is how you decline an offer.
1,000 times no. That is quintessential Coward. He wasn't one for half measures, whether it was turning down Bond or shaping the landscape of theater and cinema in the 20th century. His life was like a greatest hits compilation, with bangers like Private Lives, Blithe Spirit, and Brief Encounter. Classics that still resonate today.
Absolutely, and speaking of classics, let's take a moment to admire his style. The man could wear a tuxedo better than anyone, past or present. I mean, there's a reason Adam Lambert reworked Coward's song, Mad About the Boy, for the documentary Mad About the Boy, the Noel Coward story. It's because Coward was in every sense mad about himself, and he had the right to be.
Oh, for sure. Lambert's reworking of the song feels almost too fitting. Coward lived life like he was forever on stage, and the tuxedo? That was his uniform for battle, whether he was on the stage, at a high society cocktail party, or, get this, hanging out in Jamaica with Queen Elizabeth II, sipping vodka and beef bouillon shooters.
Oh yeah, the man knew how to host. I mean, can we talk about that for a second? Queen Elizabeth II, the ultimate guest, detoured 80 miles just to hang out with him at his Jamaican estate. And what does Coward serve her? Vodka and beef bouillon shooters. I mean, could he be more effortlessly iconic?
It's peak Noel Coward. He treated the monarchy the same way he treated everyone else. With charm, a bit of cheek, and a flair for the dramatic. It's like he always knew he was the most interesting person in the room, whether that room was a palace or a beachfront villa in Jamaica.
He was a master at balancing high society and the arts, right? I mean, one minute he's hobnobbing with royalty, the next he's breaking boundaries on stage with plays like Private Lives, a wickedly funny play that poked fun at relationships and marriage. And then there's Designed for Living, which, let's be honest, was way ahead of its time. I mean, a menage a trois between two men and a woman, and this was in the 1930s. Lisa, I want us to slide into a little break before we dive into the next half of today's episode. Now, we have something extra special to talk about, a project that's been in the works for quite a while and one that I'm personally excited to share with you.
Well, Talen, you've got my attention. You've been teasing me about this announcement for weeks, so what's cooking?
Oh, you know me. I'm all about the suspense. But let's not drag it out anymore. Drum roll, please. Listeners, you've heard us talk about it here and there, but today we're officially introducing you to an app that's been built for creators, dreamers, doers, and anyone who's passionate about the entertainment industry. It's called Film Society.
No way! The app's finally coming out? I've been waiting for this one. Okay, Talen, tell everyone, what exactly is Film Society?
Lisa, I'm glad you asked. So here's the lowdown. Film Society is this innovative new app created and produced by none other than Ethan Stark. You know, the same Ethan behind this very podcast.
Ah, the man with the plan. Ethan's been keeping busy, huh?
Oh, you bet. And we're not just talking busy. We're talking redefining how people like us, entertainment pros, indie filmmakers, screenwriters, editors, you name it, connect and thrive. Let's be real, the entertainment industry can be a tough place to break into or even sustain a career in, but this app is designed to shake things up and provide a community like no other.
Okay, you've got me hooked, but let's get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly does Film Society offer?
Good question. So, Film Society is more than just a social media platform. It's like LinkedIn meets a marketplace meets a creative hub, all rolled into one. It's tailored for entertainment industry professionals, whether you're a seasoned veteran or an up-and-coming talent. Think of it as a multi-tiered platform where each level gives you access to the tools, services, and community you need to grow and succeed.
Multi-tiered, huh? Okay, break it down for us, Talen. What kind of tiers are we talking about?
Ooh, great segue, Lisa. So the app will be rolling out its tiers one by one, with the first launch being the fan tier, which is super inclusive. If you're just someone who loves movies and entertainment or wants to dip your toes into the industry, the fan tier is your starting point. It's like the front door to this vast house of creativity.
I love that. A welcoming space for fans makes sense. What's next?
So, after that, we've got the influencer tier. This is for those of you who are starting to build a voice, a brand, or a following in the industry. You know, the content creators, social media stars, or up-and-coming talents who want to expand their reach.
And I imagine it doesn't stop there.
Oh, absolutely not. The real kicker is the access tier. That's where things get super interesting. This tier targets all freelance professionals, editors, cinematographers, scriptwriters, you name it. The idea here is to bring together skilled professionals in entertainment to not just network, but to collaborate and even find work. There's a gig market, a marketplace for secondhand gear, master classes from top industry professionals, and specialized editing services.
Okay, wow. That's like a whole industry in your pocket kind of deal.
Yeah, exactly. And okay, let's not forget that Film Society also has a news feature. It'll pull in the latest industry updates from reputable sources like Hollywood Reporter and Variety. So if you're looking to stay up to date on trends, deals, and the latest news, you'll be in the loop without even leaving the app.
I can see how that would be super valuable, especially for freelancers trying to stay ahead of the curve.
Yeah, it's all about giving users a competitive edge, and it doesn't stop there. So there's even a vertical SaaS market for entertainment-specific software. So whether you're managing a project, editing a film, or handling client communications, it's a one-stop shop for all your needs.
Talen, this really does sound like something the industry needs right now. There are so many moving parts in entertainment, and having a centralized platform could be a game changer.
Couldn't have said it better myself, Lisa. I think that's exactly what Ethan was going for, a place that offers connection, collaboration, and most importantly, opportunity. And here's the best part. Film Society is launching soon. I can't give you an exact date yet, but trust me, it's right around the corner.
So listeners, mark your calendars. Well, mentally at least. But let's talk specifics, Talen. You mentioned it's a place for collaboration and opportunity. What's the social aspect like?
I'm glad you asked that. On Film Society, you've got your profile just like you would on any other social app, but the focus is on showcasing your work, projects, skills, and interests. There are forums and community spaces where you can join discussions, ask questions, or share your latest projects. And if you're a pro looking for collaborators or new gigs, there's a robust search feature that lets you find exactly who or what you're looking for.
I love that. It's like Ethan thought of everything.
You know Ethan, always thorough, and it gets better. There are going to be exclusive events, both virtual and in person for members. So whether you're networking from your couch or attending an in-person festival or workshop, there are opportunities to make real connections and gain real insight from industry leaders.
That's fantastic. And I think our audience can relate, especially in this digital age, where remote work and virtual collaborations are so common. Having an app that brings it all together just makes sense.
Absolutely. It's all about accessibility and empowerment. Ethan's vision with Film Society, which by the way may soon be getting a fresh rebrand, so keep an eye out, is to create a thriving ecosystem where creators can connect, learn, grow, and thrive.
That sounds like a dream come true for so many people in the industry. And speaking of Ethan, we couldn't wrap this up without giving a big shout out to the man himself. He's the brains behind not just Film Society, but this podcast as well.
Yeah, totally. Ethan's been driving this ship from day one, and his passion for building communities and fostering collaboration, it's contagious. So, Ethan, if you're listening to this episode, thank you for making this all happen.
Absolutely. Hats off to you, Ethan. And listeners, if you want to stay in the loop on all things Film Society, be sure to follow us on social media, where we'll be dropping exclusive updates on the app's release. And don't worry, we'll keep you posted right here on The Real Debrief as well.
Well, folks, that's the scoop on Film Society. We are beyond excited for you to experience it. Keep your eyes peeled for the official release date. And in the meantime, if you have questions or thoughts, drop us a line. We'd love to hear from you. And now we'll dive into the rest of today's episode.
Coward was always playing with societal norms, often wrapping radical ideas in a layer of glittering humor. It's like, oh, you're uncomfortable with progressive ideas? Let me serve them to you with a side of biting wit and an impeccable cocktail. That way, you're too busy laughing and admiring his style to realize he's just upended the social conventions you hold dear.
Exactly, and he wasn't just ahead of the curve socially. He was also navigating a personal identity that, for his time, was completely criminalized. Coward was gay, and while he never made a public declaration about his sexuality, it's something that permeated his work and his life. He hid his insecurities and struggles behind this perfectly polished facade. It's that classic British stiff upper lip, but with a far more glamorous, witty twist.
Right. He didn't live in a time where he could be openly himself in public, so he used his writing to channel that part of him into characters and situations that danced around the edges of what was acceptable. But what I find fascinating is that despite the repression he must have felt, Coward's work was never bitter. He had this ability to take the constraints of his era and turn them into something dazzling.
That's what makes his legacy so compelling. There's a resilience to his work that isn't about anger or frustration, but about finding joy, humor, and elegance in the face of those restrictions. His plays aren't heavy-handed or didactic, but they still push the boundaries. They're like a perfectly crafted cocktail. Light, refreshing, but with a serious kick that sneaks up on you.
And speaking of kicking back, let's not forget that Coward wasn't just a playwright. He was also a singer, a composer, an actor, and a director. That man did it all, and he did it with such ease. He even starred in Brief Encounter, one of the most romantic films of all time, without making it feel saccharine or over the top. It's like everything he touched had this layer of sophistication and depth.
Yeah, and Brief Encounter is interesting because it's so restrained, right? It's about these two people who fall in love but can't be together. It's achingly British in that way. It's all about the unspoken emotions and the things they can't say. And of course, it's handled with that perfect Noel Coward touch. Just enough emotional tension, but not so much that you need a box of tissues by the end.
Exactly. It's romantic, but it's also about the complexities of life and the choices we make. And that's what Noel Coward did so well. He captured those moments in life that are messy and complicated, but with such grace. He gave us characters who were flawed but lovable, who could make us laugh one minute and break our hearts the next.
It's kind of wild when you think about it. Here's a guy who basically shaped British theater and film, influenced Broadway, and then just casually dropped classics like Blithe's Spirit, a comedy about a ghost who haunts her ex-husband and his new wife into the world. That play was a smash hit and is still being performed today. Talk about a legacy.
Oh, Blithe's Spirit is a gem. It's funny, clever, and a little dark. It's one of those plays where the humor sneaks up on you because the situation is just so absurd. I mean, a seance gone wrong, bringing back your ex-wife's ghost to haunt you and your new spouse? Come on, it's brilliant.
And yet, only Coward could pull off something that ridiculous with such elegance. That's the thing. He made it all look effortless, even though we know it wasn't. Behind the suave, tuxedo-clad exterior was a man who worked incredibly hard, who wrote countless plays, songs, and stories, and who, despite all his success, was often dealing with his own personal insecurities.
Yes, and I think that's why people are still drawn to him today. Coward was human. He was this larger-than-life figure who seemed to have it all, but underneath, he had the same doubts and struggles as everyone else, and that comes through in his work. His characters are glamorous, but they're also flawed, and that makes them relatable.
It's like Coward himself was a character in one of his plays. I mean, he created this persona, the sharp-tongued, sophisticated man about town. But he was also performing that role every day. It must have been exhausting at times, but he did it with such grace.
Exactly, and he never let the personal challenges or the societal restrictions break him. Instead, he took all of that and turned it into something beautiful, something that could make people laugh, think, and feel. That's the real genius of Noel Coward. He took the weight of the world, and instead of letting it crush him, he spun it into gold, wrapped in perfectly timed quips, and served with a side of martini, naturally.
Absolutely. And it wasn't just gold for his time. His work still sparkles today. People are still performing his plays, still listening to his music, still quoting his one-liners. I mean, how many playwrights from the early 20th century can we say that about?
Not many, and that's why I think Coward remains such a cultural touchstone. His wit feels timeless. It's sharp, but never cruel. And even when he's poking fun at the absurdities of society, there's always this undercurrent of warmth. Like he's saying, yeah, people are ridiculous. But so are we, darling, so let's laugh at it together.
Yeah, exactly. And I love that about him. His humor was never mean-spirited. Even when his characters were being, well, a bit insufferable, there was always this sense that he found humanity endearing in all of its flaws. It's like he was constantly winking at us saying, isn't life just a bit ridiculous? But isn't it grand?
It's that grandiosity paired with self-awareness that makes him so appealing. And Coward didn't just live in the upper echelons of society. He became the upper echelon. He was this self-made icon who charmed his way into the highest circles, but always with a sense of, I know what this is. It's all just theater, darling.
Exactly. And it's fascinating how he navigated that. Coming from relative poverty, teaching himself everything he needed to know, and then constructing this persona that was so untouchable. But instead of alienating people, it drew them in. I mean, he made people want to be part of his world even if they knew he was performing most of the time.
And that performance aspect of his life is something I think we can all relate to, right? I mean, we all put on masks to some extent, especially in social situations. But Coward just elevated that to an art form. He took the idea of playing a role in life and ran with it, on stage, on screen, and off.
Absolutely. I think that's part of why his work continues to resonate. We all have moments where we feel like we're performing, and Coward makes that performance feel both glamorous and slightly absurd. It's like he's saying, yes, life is strange, but you might as well give it your best show.
And that's the brilliance of his writing, too. His plays are full of these characters who are performing in one way or another, whether it's performing for society, for love, or just to keep up appearances. And yet, there's always this undercurrent of truth, this sense that behind the performance, there's a real person struggling with real emotions.
Yeah, and I think that's why his characters feel so alive. Even when they're delivering the most biting, clever lines, there's always something bubbling beneath the surface. They're never just one-dimensional, you know? They have layers, and Coward gives us glimpses of those layers without ever letting the performance drop completely.
Exactly. And it's that balancing act that makes his work so enduring. It's funny, it's sharp, but it also has heart. It's light and frothy on the surface, but with depth if you care to look for it. And that's why his plays still work, even for modern audiences. The humor is timeless, and the emotions are universal.
And speaking of timeless, I think we need to talk about how Noel Coward was basically a brand before personal branding was even a thing. I mean, the man was the epitome of cool. Everything about him, from the way he dressed, to the way he spoke, to the way he lived, was so meticulously curated.
Oh, for sure. He understood the power of image long before Instagram made it mainstream. Every time Coward stepped out in public, he knew he was being watched, and he knew how to control that narrative. He was always the best dressed, always the most charming, and always in control. It's no wonder people gravitated toward him.
And it wasn't just surface-level charm. He had substance, too. He could write a hit play in a week, churn out brilliant songs, and then turn them around and act in his own productions. It's almost unfair how much talent the man had. Like, save some for the rest of us, Noel.
Seriously. But that's the thing. He worked for it. Sure, he made it look easy, but there was a tremendous amount of effort behind that polished exterior. He wasn't born into wealth or privilege. He fought his way up. And once he got to the top, he made sure he stayed there with style.
And he had that remarkable ability to pivot when necessary. When theater started to become a bit more serious and naturalistic, Coward didn't just stick with what he knew. He adapted. He made films, he wrote songs, he reinvented himself time and time again.
That's true. Even when his plays started to fall out of favor in the post-war years, he found new ways to remain relevant. Whether it was acting in movies or entertaining royalty and Hollywood stars in Jamaica, Coward always knew how to stay in the limelight without it feeling forced.
Exactly. He wasn't just a flash in the pan. He had staying power. And that's why we're still talking about him today. I mean, you can watch one of his plays from 80 years ago and still laugh. You can listen to one of his songs and still feel that wit and charm come through.
And that's the mark of a true icon. Coward's work endures because it speaks to something timeless in all of us, the desire for elegance, wit, and a little bit of escape from the everyday. He gave people that escape, wrapped up in a clever line or a beautifully crafted melody.
Well said, Lisa. I personally think Noel Coward would have approved of this conversation, though I'm sure he would have had a few suggestions for how to make it even wittier.
Oh, without a doubt. He'd probably rewrite the whole thing, send us a telegram that just said, no, 1,000 times no. And then we'd be left there trying to live up to his impossibly high standards.
Exactly. But until Coward's ghost shows up to edit our work, I think we've done a decent job celebrating his legacy today. So, to everyone listening, if you haven't seen a Noel Coward play or heard his songs, do yourself a favor and dive into his world. It's a place full of sharp wit, elegance, and endless entertainment.
Yes, and remember, there's always room for a bit of glamour and a lot of wit in everyday life. Take a page from Coward's book and make the world your stage.
Couldn't have said it better myself. So that's it for today's episode, folks. Thank you for joining us on this journey through the life and legacy of Noël Coward. If you liked what you heard, be sure to subscribe, leave us a review, and let us know who you'd like us to cover next.
And if you didn't like what you heard, well, as Coward might say, don't be so tiresome, darling.
Perfect. Well, until next time, keep it witty, keep it glamorous, and remember, life is far too important to be taken seriously.
This has been The Real Debrief. We hope you've enjoyed the show. If you did, like, rate, and review. We'll see you soon on The Real Debrief.